Can you imagine the woman who gave birth to you standing in court, publicly tearing you down, saying you're an unstable mother who can barely hold a job? Well, that happened to me. But what she didn't know was that I'd been a judge for 6 years, and the moment that truth came out, her face went utterly white. Growing up in Lexington, a charming town just outside Boston, I often felt like I was on a stage, and my mother, Evelyn, was the only audience member who never clapped. Our house looked picture perfect, exactly how she wanted her life to appear to the outside world. But behind that pristine facade, things were different. My mom was a perfectionist, and nothing I did was ever good enough. An A- wasn't an A+. Second place wasn't first. Her standards were impossible, and her criticism, relentless. Adelaide, stand up straight. Adelaide, your hair is a mess. That outfit makes you look heavy. Her words became a constant echo in my head, even when she wasn't there. I tried so hard, twisting myself into knots just to earn a shred of her approval. It never came. My father, James, he was my refuge, the gentle buffer between us. He had kind eyes, and he'd wink at me across the dinner table when Mom started one of her critical tangents. Your mother just wants what's best for you, he'd say later, but his eyes always held an apology. He loved her, but he saw how her words sliced into me. Then, when I was 12, everything shattered. My father had a heart attack driving home. His car swerved into a tree. He was gone, just like that. I lost my champion, my ally, the only person who made me feel like I was truly enough. After his death, Mom changed. Her criticism sharpened, as if she needed to fill the void of his gentleness with even more harshness. She became obsessed with appearances, with what the neighbors thought, with maintaining this illusion of a perfect family, even as we were falling apart inside. We need to be strong, Adelaide, she'd preach. No one respects weakness. What she really meant was, I couldn't show any grief, any sign of our struggle. My tears became secret, silent rivers that flowed onto my pillow at night. School became my only escape. I poured myself into academics with a passion that even surprised my teachers. If I couldn't earn my mother's approval, I'd earn it from everyone else. Each perfect test score, every award, was like a shield I hoped would deflect her criticism. It rarely worked. Sarah Miller's daughter just got into Harvard early decision, she'd say, completely ignoring my straight-A report card. And she plays 3 instruments. I didn't play any instruments. I wasn't exceptional in any way that mattered to my mother. But during those lonely teenage years, I found something else, a fierce passion for justice. It began in debate club, where I finally found my voice, arguing ethics and law. It deepened in a youth court program, where I felt, for the very first time, completely in my element. When I told my mother I dreamed of being a lawyer someday, maybe even a judge, she didn't just laugh. It was that dismissive, stomach-turning laugh. Be realistic, Adelaide. Those positions are for people with connections, with pedigrees. Focus on something attainable. Standing in our kitchen, my dreams ridiculed, something inside me clicked. Her words, instead of crushing me, hardened into an unbreakable determination. I wouldn't just become a judge despite what she thought. I'd become one because of it. I would prove her wrong. College applications became my secret rebellion. I applied to 17 schools without telling her about most of them. When the acceptance letters started arriving, including one from Boston University with a partial scholarship, a jolt of power surged through me. For once, I had options that weren't dictated by her. Boston University is too expensive, she scoffed when I showed her the letter. The community college is perfectly adequate. I went to Boston University anyway. To cover what the scholarship didn't, I worked 3 jobs, mornings at a coffee shop, evenings at the library, weekends as a research assistant. I barely slept. My mother called it stubbornness. I called it independence. Law school applications followed the same pattern. I studied obsessively for the LSAT, scored in the 98th percentile, and earned a spot at Harvard Law. When I called to tell my mother, her response was utterly predictable. Harvard? How do you expect to pay for that? Always reaching beyond your means, Adelaide. I didn't tell her about the scholarship, or the loans, or the constant jobs I'd keep just to get by. I just said, I'll figure it out, and hung up. Harvard Law is also where I met Thomas. He sat next to me in constitutional law, a tall, thoughtful man with kind eyes that, sometimes, brought a painful memory of my father. Unlike everyone else, who seemed to be constantly vying for attention, Thomas actually listened. He noticed things, including me. "You never talk about your family," he observed one night after 3 months of dating, as we studied in the library. "Not much to talk about," I replied, my eyes glued to my textbook. "Everyone has a story," he said quietly. That night, I finally told him everything. About my mother, her impossible standards, the constant criticism, how I'd spent my entire life trying, and failing, to be good enough. Thomas listened, not once interrupting. When I finished, he just took my hand. "She's wrong about you," he said simply. "And someday, she'll realize that." I married Thomas in our final year of law school. My mother did attend the small ceremony, her lips pressed into that familiar thin line of disapproval. "Are you sure about this?" she asked, straightening my simple dress in the back room of the courthouse. "Marriage and a career don't mix well. You'll have to choose eventually." I didn't even bother to respond. I was done trying to convince her. After graduation, Thomas and I both landed positions at firms in Boston. He focused on corporate law. I gravitated towards family law. I worked 70-hour weeks, driven to distinguish myself. When an opportunity to clerk for a judge came up, I seized it. That clerkship led to a position as an assistant district attorney, specializing in cases involving children. My mother remained utterly unimpressed. "Another new job? Can't stick with anything, can you?" she'd comment during our increasingly rare phone calls. I stopped telling her about my career progress after that. Let her believe what she wanted. I knew the truth. I wasn't jumping from job to job. I was climbing. 2 years later, when Lily was born, my life exploded in ways I never imagined. This tiny human, with Thomas's kind eyes and my stubborn chin, became the absolute center of my universe. For the first time, I understood unconditional love. I swore that my daughter would never question her worth the way I had. Balancing motherhood and my career was a relentless challenge. Some nights, I'd rock Lily to sleep with one arm while reviewing case files with the other. Some mornings, I'd show up to court on 3 hours of sleep, formula stains on my blazer barely hidden by my robe. But I made it work. Thomas and I were true partners, trading off responsibilities, supporting each other's dreams. Then, the call came about the judicial appointment. I was changing Lily's diaper, of all things. I was only 24, one of the youngest judges ever appointed in our district. The committee had been impressed by my work as an ADA, especially my handling of delicate cases involving children. The position was in family court, exactly where I wanted to be. I accepted immediately. That night, Thomas came home with champagne, and we celebrated in our tiny apartment, Lily babbling happily between us on the couch. "Are you going to tell your mother?" Thomas asked gently. I actually considered it. For a fleeting moment, I pictured her pride, her realization that she'd been wrong about me all along. Then reality, that cold, familiar weight, settled back in. "No," I finally said. She'd just find a way to diminish it, to make it seem less than what it was. So, my mother continued to believe I was professionally unstable, flitting from job to job, unable to commit. Meanwhile, every morning, I put on a black robe and made decisions that profoundly affected the lives of families in crisis. The irony wasn't lost on me. For 6 long years, I served as a judge, and my mother remained completely oblivious. We kept up a distant relationship, obligatory holiday visits, draining phone calls. She doted on Lily, yes, but couldn't resist criticizing my parenting. "She seems very attached to that pacifier. You know that'll ruin her teeth." Or, "Is that what you're feeding her? No wonder she's so fussy. You work too much, Adelaide. Children need their mother present." I learned to let her words slide off me, shielding both myself and Lily from their toxic sting. What I didn't know was that my mother wasn't just criticizing, she was collecting. She was storing away every perceived misstep, every comment, like ammunition for a battle I had no idea was coming. By the way, if you're still here, still wondering how this story unfolds, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss what comes next, or the other unbelievable stories I'm planning to share. The call came on a Tuesday evening. I was in my chambers, deep in a particularly difficult custody case, when my sister Natalie's name flashed on my phone. Natalie and I had never been close. She was 2 years younger, Mom's golden child, always compliant. Until her junior year of college, that is, when she vanished into a decade-long struggle with substance abuse. Adelaide. Her voice was thin, fragile. I need help. She was in rehab again, her third attempt at sobriety. This time, Child Protective Services had intervened. Her children, Emma and Jack, 6 and 4, had been found alone in their apartment. Natalie was unconscious from an overdose in the bathroom. She survived, but her parental rights were in serious jeopardy. They say I can't have them back until I complete the program and prove I can stay clean, she sobbed. They're talking about foster care, Adelaide. Please, don't let them put my babies in foster care. I closed my eyes, feeling the crushing weight of her plea. Thomas and I had discussed taking in Natalie's kids before, during previous crises, but it had never been this real. Now, these children, my niece and nephew whom I'd only met a handful of times, truly needed a home. Let me talk to Thomas, I said. We'll figure something out. Thomas didn't hesitate for a second. Of course, we'll take them, he affirmed that night, after Lily was asleep. They are family. The next morning, I contacted CPS and began the temporary custody process for Emma and Jack. The social worker seemed visibly relieved that a family member was stepping forward. The children had been in emergency foster care for 3 days, frightened and utterly confused. There's just one thing, the social worker mentioned at the very end of our call. Your mother has also filed for custody. The words hit me like a physical blow. My mother, the woman who dissected every parenting choice I'd ever made, now wanted to take on 2 traumatized children? It made absolutely no sense. Are you sure? I asked, foolishly. Yes, Evelyn Peterson filed yesterday. She states she's a maternal grandmother and believes the children would be better off with her. A cold dread settled deep in my stomach. This wasn't about Emma and Jack. This was about control, about proving that she, not me, knew what was best. It was the ultimate, stinging indictment of her lack of faith in me as a mother. I tried calling her immediately, but she didn't answer. Instead, a text message arrived. We will let the courts decide what is best for the children. The courts. My domain. Except, of course, I couldn't preside over a case involving my own family. And my mother knew that. What she didn't know was that I would be appearing in court, not as a judge, but as a petitioner for custody, finally revealing my profession in the process. The first mediation was scheduled for the following week. I took personal leave from my judicial duties, citing a family emergency. Chief Justice Morgan Thompson was incredibly understanding. A mother herself and my mentor since my appointment. She simply said, take whatever time you need. Family comes first. I walked into the mediation room to find my mother already seated, her posture rigid, her face set in that familiar mask of disapproval. She wore a brand new navy suit, her hair freshly colored and styled. Every detail screamed, capable, responsible grandmother. Hello, Mother, I said, sitting across from her. Adelaide, she nodded slightly. I assume you understand why I had to do this. Actually, no, I don't understand at all. Thomas and I are perfectly capable of caring for Emma and Jack. She let out a small, dismissive sniff. You've always put your career first. These children need stability, attention, proper guidance. They need someone who will be present. The mediator, a kind-faced woman named Patricia, entered before I could respond to that fresh insult. She explained the process and asked each of us to present our case. I spoke of our home, the spare bedroom ready for 2 children, Lily's excitement about her cousins. I explained how Thomas and I had flexible work arrangements that allowed us to balance our careers with being present parents. Then my mother spoke, and I felt the ground shift violently beneath me. My daughter, she began, her voice dripping with artificial concern, has never been able to maintain stability in her life. She jumps from job to job, never settling, always chasing the next opportunity. Her husband works long hours, and she leaves her own daughter with a nanny most days. These traumatized children need constant care and attention, which I am prepared to provide. I am retired, with a comfortable home and savings. I can dedicate myself to them fully. The mediator looked at me. Would you like to respond to your mother's characterization of your employment history? My mouth opened, then closed. A part of me screamed to shout the truth. I am a judge. I have held the same position for 6 years. But another part, that wounded child still desperate for approval, couldn't form the words. Instead, I simply said, my employment is stable. I can provide documentation. My mother smiled thinly. We'll see. The mediation ended without resolution. As we left, my mother touched my arm, stopping me in the hallway. I'm doing this for the children's sake, she insisted. You must see that they would be better off with me. No, mother, I replied, my voice shaking with suppressed anger. What I see is that you have never believed in me, and this is just one more way to prove it. Her eyes narrowed. If you really cared about those children, you'd step aside. I yanked my arm away. If you really cared about me, you would have supported me just once in my life. I walked away, my hands trembling uncontrollably. This was no longer just about Emma and Jack, though they remained my absolute priority. This was about 3 decades of crushing criticism and gnawing doubt. This was about finally, irrevocably, standing up to the woman who had never thought I was good enough. What I didn't know then was just how far she would go to win. She's gathering evidence against you. My attorney, Sophia Winters, told me during our preparation. We sat in her sunlit office, Boston skyline a stark contrast to the darkness of our conversation. Evidence? What kind? I asked, though a chilling premonition already answered me. Sophia slid a folder across her desk. Your mother has submitted a detailed account of what she calls your parental deficiencies. Dates, incidents, quotes. Claims you've been neglectful of Lily, and would be similarly neglectful of Emma and Jack. I opened the folder with trembling hands. Inside were pages and pages of meticulously documented criticisms, from Lily's birth to our last family gathering just 3 months ago. Every perceived mistake, every parenting choice my mother disagreed with, carefully noted with dates and circumstances. April 3rd, 2 years ago, Adelaide arrived 45 minutes late to Easter dinner. Lily was fussy and appeared overtired. When I suggested the child needed a more consistent schedule, Adelaide dismissed my concern. November 28th last year, found Lily playing unsupervised in the living room while Adelaide was on her phone in the kitchen. Child could have injured herself on numerous hazards. On and on it went. A horrifying chronicle of manufactured inadequacies designed to paint me as a careless, self-absorbed mother. The final entry turned my blood cold. June 10th this year. Adelaide admitted she sometimes takes work calls during Lily's dinner time, prioritizes career over child's basic needs. Pattern of behavior suggests fundamental unsuitability for taking on additional childcare responsibilities. She's been planning this, I whispered, a sickening realization washing over me. All those visits, those times she offered to watch Lily, she was building a case against me. Sophia nodded grimly. And she's recruited witnesses. Your Aunt Claire, your cousin Beth, even your old neighbor, Mrs. Sullivan, all prepared to testify about your supposed shortcomings as a parent. I leaned back, feeling like all the air had been sucked from the room. They don't even know me. I see Aunt Claire once a year at Christmas. She moved away when Lily was an infant. Your mother can be very persuasive, it seems, Sophia said, and people are often willing to make statements about things they have minimal direct knowledge of, especially when it comes to family matters. My phone buzzed, a text from Thomas, home with Lily. Social worker just left after home evaluation. Went well, I think. Love you. At least that was something. Our home was clean, safe, child-friendly. We'd already prepared Emma and Jack's room with twin beds, colorful bedding, and age-appropriate toys. The social worker had seemed genuinely impressed with our preparations and Lily's obvious happiness. "What about my job?" I asked Sophia. "She keeps saying I jump from job to job." "When the truth comes out that you've been a judge for 6 years, that's actually our strongest counterpoint," Sophia confirmed. "The revelation about your career's stability and position will significantly undermine her credibility." "But Adelaide, I have to ask, why did you never tell her you were a judge?" I stared out the window at the city below, finally articulating the truth to myself. At first, it was because I knew she'd find some way to diminish it, to make it seem less than what it was. Then, as time passed, it became a boundary. The one part of my life she couldn't criticize because she didn't even know about it. Sophia's eyes held understanding. "Well, she's about to find out in the most public way possible. The hearing is next week, and Judge Thompson will be presiding." "Morgan, but she knows me." "Exactly. When your mother claimed you were unstable professionally, the clerk recognized your name and brought it to Judge Thompson's attention. She specifically requested to take the case." A small, fragile spark of hope flickered inside me. Morgan Thompson was fair, principled. She wouldn't show favoritism, but she would ensure the truth came to light. That evening, on our back porch after putting Lily to bed, I showed Thomas my mother's monstrous list of failures. "This is insane," he said, his voice tight with anger. "These are completely normal parenting moments, twisted to sound neglectful. Being late to Easter dinner makes you an unfit mother. Taking a work call occasionally means you don't care about your child. By these standards, no parent would qualify as adequate." I leaned against his shoulder, utterly exhausted. "She's always been like this. Nothing I do is ever good enough. But I never thought she'd go this far." "We will fight this," Thomas said firmly. "And we will win. The truth is on our side." But as the hearing approached, my confidence wavered. Rumors spread like wildfire through the legal community. Colleagues looked at me with curiosity or pity. I was on leave, but the courthouse was still my workplace, and now it would be the stage for this agonizing family drama. 2 days before the hearing, Thomas found me on the floor of what would be Emma and Jack's room, surrounded by children's books, crying silently. "Adelaide," he said, sitting beside me and taking my hand. "Talk to me. What if she's right?" I whispered. "What if I'm not good enough? What if I can't give these children what they need?" Thomas took my face in his hands, forcing me to meet his gaze. "Listen to me. You are an exceptional mother to Lily. You will be an exceptional aunt and guardian to Emma and Jack. Your mother's voice in your head is not the truth. It never has been." I nodded, desperately wanting to believe him. The day before the hearing, we had our first supervised visit with Emma and Jack. They were beautiful children, Natalie's dark hair, solemn eyes. Emma, 6, was fiercely protective of a younger brother, constantly checking on him. Jack, 4, was shy but curious, peeking at us from behind his sister. I said, kneeling to their level. "I'm your Aunt Adelaide. This is your Uncle Thomas. And this is your cousin, Lily." Lily, so excited, stepped forward with a book. "Do you like stories?" she asked. Emma nodded cautiously. "Me too," Lily said, sitting cross-legged on the floor, patting the space beside her. Slowly, Emma and Jack joined her. As Lily began to read the book she'd memorized, I saw the first hint of relaxation in their small bodies. Thomas squeezed my hand. In that moment, I knew with absolute certainty we were doing the right thing. These children belonged with us, part of our family, and I would fight with everything I had to make that happen. That night, sleep wouldn't come. I kept replaying the courtroom in my mind, my mother's accusations, the public revelation of my career. Tomorrow, everything would change. For better or worse, the truth would finally burst into the light. The morning of the hearing dawned clear and bright, a beautiful June day that completely belied the storm raging inside the courthouse. I stood on the steps of the building where I usually entered through judicial chambers, feeling strangely disoriented. Today, I'd walk through the main entrance, just like any other citizen seeking justice. "Ready?" Thomas asked, his hand a steady anchor on my back. I nodded, though ready was the last thing I felt. We'd dressed carefully that morning, professional but approachable. I wore a navy blue dress with a light cardigan, deliberate choices to project stability and warmth. Thomas was in a gray suit, his lucky tie, the one Lily had picked out. Inside, the courthouse buzzed with its usual morning activity. A few colleagues nodded discreetly as we passed, their expressions carefully neutral. News of the case had spread, and I could feel curious eyes following us as we made our way to the designated courtroom. My mother was already there, seated beside her attorney, Richard Harlow, a sharp-featured man known for his aggressive tactics in family court. She wore a conservative gray suit with a pearl necklace, her hair perfectly styled, the very picture of a dignified, responsible grandmother. When she saw me, she straightened her shoulders but offered no other acknowledgement. Emma and Jack's social worker, Miss Patel, sat in the front row, a thick file on her lap. Her report would carry significant weight. At precisely 9 o'clock, the bailiff called the court to order, and Chief Justice Morgan Thompson entered. Tall and imposing in her black robes, silver threaded through her dark hair, she commanded respect with her mere presence. She nodded to the court, then took her seat. "We are here in the matter of guardianship for minors Emma and Jack Collins," she began, her voice clear and authoritative. "I understand both the maternal aunt, Adelaide Bennett, and the maternal grandmother, Evelyn Peterson, are seeking custody." The preliminary matters proceeded with formal statements. Sophia presented our case first, highlighting our stable home, financial security, and commitment to keeping the siblings together in a loving family environment with their cousin. She mentioned my stable employment. Without specifying my role as a judge, we agreed to let that revelation come naturally. Then Richard Harlow rose for my mother's case. His opening statement painted my mother as the selfless grandmother, ready to devote her retirement to her grandchildren, contrasting her with me, the supposedly career-obsessed niece who couldn't be relied upon. "Your Honor," he concluded, "we will present evidence that Miss Bennett's home environment and work history make her fundamentally unsuitable as a guardian for these vulnerable children." I felt Thomas tense beside me. I squeezed his hand, silently urging him to stay calm. We'd anticipated this. The first witnesses were character references for both sides. Thomas's parents spoke about our parenting abilities and stable home. My colleague, Judge David Chen, carefully avoided mentioning my judicial role while attesting to my character and integrity. Then came my mother's witnesses. Aunt Claire took the stand, nervously avoiding my gaze, confirming she had concerns about my parenting based on family gatherings where I seemed distracted with Lily. On cross-examination, Sophia established Aunt Claire had only seen me with Lily 4 times in 8 years, hardly enough for a comprehensive opinion. My cousin Beth testified via video link from California, repeating almost verbatim phrases from my mother's documented list. When Sophia asked when she'd last seen me in person, she admitted it had been 5 years ago at a family reunion when Lily was 3. By mid-morning, it was my mother's turn. She settled into the witness stand with the composed confidence of someone absolutely convinced of her own righteousness. Richard Harlow led her through questions about her relationship with Emma and Jack, her home, her financial stability, her availability. Then came the attack I'd been dreading. "Mrs. Peterson," Harlow asked, "do you have concerns about your daughter's ability to provide a stable home for these children?" My mother sighed, a performance of reluctance that made my teeth clench. "I don't want to speak ill of my daughter," she began, which was, of course, the very definition of speaking ill. But Adelaide has always struggled with commitment and follow-through. As a mother, I've watched her jump from interest to interest, job to job, never settling. Even with Lily, she seems more concerned with her career than her child's needs. "Could you elaborate on her employment history?" Harlow prompted. This was it, the moment of reckoning. My mother leaned forward slightly, her voice taking on a tone of sad, almost pitying concern. "Adelaide has never held a job for more than a year or two. Right after law school, she worked at a firm, then left a clerk for a judge, then became some kind of assistant prosecutor, then something else. She constantly changes positions, always claiming it's a step up, but never finding satisfaction. She can barely hold a job. A palpable murmur ran through the courtroom. I sat perfectly still, feeling strangely calm now that the accusation had finally been made explicit. Thomas's hand tightened around mine. And you believe this employment instability affects her parenting? Harlow pressed. Of course it does, she insisted. Children need consistency, stability. Adelaide's restlessness, her constant career changes, create an unpredictable environment. Emma and Jack have already experienced too much instability with my younger daughter's issues. They need a rock, not another person whose priorities lie elsewhere. A single tear slid down my cheek. I quickly brushed it away. These weren't just cruel words. They were a fundamental misunderstanding of who I was, who I had always been. My mother truly believed I was incapable, unreliable, inadequate. When Richard Harlow finished, Sophia stood for cross-examination. She approached the witness stand with measured steps. Mrs. Peterson, she began, when was the last time your daughter told you about a job change? My mother frowned slightly. She doesn't always tell me directly, but I know she's moved around frequently in the legal profession. So, you don't actually know her current employment status or position. I know she works as some kind of lawyer, my mother said dismissively. The specifics change so often, it's hard to keep track. Sophia nodded thoughtfully. Your Honor, I would like to introduce evidence regarding Miss Bennett's employment history. Chief Justice Thompson nodded. Proceed. Sophia handed a document to the court clerk, who passed copies to the judge, my mother's attorney, and my mother. This is a verified record of Adelaide Bennett's employment history since graduating from Harvard Law School 8 years ago. My mother glanced at the paper, her expression still dismissive. Mrs. Peterson, would you please read the final entry on that employment record? Sophia requested. My mother squinted at the document. It says, Family Court Judge, Massachusetts 6th District. Duration, 6 years to present. She looked up, confusion slowly crossing her features. The courtroom had fallen into an absolute, breathless silence. Every eye darted between my mother and me. Chief Justice Thompson cleared her throat. For the record, she said, her voice resonating in the quiet room, I can confirm that Adelaide Bennett has served as a judge in this very courthouse for the past 6 years. She is one of the youngest judges ever appointed in our district and has an exemplary record on the bench, particularly in cases involving children's welfare. My mother's face went utterly, shockingly white. Her hand, still holding the employment record, trembled visibly. She has been a judge for 6 years, the Chief Justice repeated, the words hanging in the air like an undeniable verdict. Richard Harlow leaned over to whisper something to my mother, but she shook her head slightly, still staring at me with an expression of stunned disbelief. Mrs. Peterson, Sophia continued gently. Given this information, would you like to revise your statement about your daughter's employment stability? My mother swallowed hard, unable to speak. Because your daughter stopped informing you about her career achievements after years of having them dismissed and criticized. Is that correct? Before my mother could answer, Richard Harlow leapt to his feet. Objection, Your Honor. Counsel is testifying. Sustained, Chief Justice Thompson said. Miss Winters, please rephrase. Sophia nodded. Mrs. Peterson, when was the last time you expressed pride or approval regarding one of your daughter's career accomplishments? My mother's gaze dropped to her hands. I do not recall specifically. No further questions, Your Honor, Sophia said, returning to her seat beside me. As my mother stepped down from the witness stand, her shoulders were slumped in a way I had never, ever seen before. For the first time in my entire memory, she looked small, truly small. The next witness was Miss Patel, the social worker. She testified that both homes were physically appropriate, but her recommendation leaned towards placement with us, citing the presence of a cousin close in age and the strong, loving family unit we'd demonstrated. Finally, it was my turn to testify. As I took the oath, a strange, quiet peace settled over me. The truth was out. Whatever came next, I would no longer be carrying the immense weight of that secret. Sophia guided me through questions about our home, our plans for Emma and Jack, and my relationship with Natalie. Then, She addressed the elephant in the room. Adelaide, could you explain to the court why you never informed your mother about your position as a judge? I took a deep breath, and for the first time that day, looked directly at my mother. From the time I was a child, nothing I did was ever good enough. I began, my voice steady. Every achievement was met with criticism. Every goal dismissed as unrealistic. When I was appointed to the bench 6 years ago, I made the decision not to share that information with my mother because I wanted one part of my life to be free from her judgment. I wanted to do my job without hearing all the ways she thought I was failing at it. The courtroom was absolutely silent as I continued. I'm not an unstable person. I am not an inadequate mother. I have built a career I am proud of, a family I cherish, and a home where Lily thrives. Emma and Jack deserve that same environment. They deserve to grow up believing in themselves, not constantly questioning their worth. When Sophia finished, Richard Harlow, my mother's attorney, declined to cross-examine me. There was nothing left to challenge. Chief Justice Thompson called a recess before delivering her decision. As we filed out, I glimpsed my mother, sitting alone on a bench in the hallway, looking utterly lost. For a fleeting moment, I almost went to her. But then Thomas gently touched my arm, and we walked outside, needing to breathe in the fresh air and prepare for whatever came next. The courtroom seemed even more crowded when we returned. Word of the dramatic revelation had spread like wildfire. I kept my eyes forward as we took our seats, avoiding the curious glances from spectators. Thomas sat beside me, his steady presence a deep comfort. My mother entered last, her attorney guiding her to their table. She looked diminished somehow, her earlier confidence completely replaced by a stiff uncertainty. When our eyes briefly met, she quickly looked away, a gesture that spoke volumes about how the power dynamic between us had utterly shifted. Chief Justice Thompson returned to the bench, her expression unreadable. The courtroom fell silent in anticipation. After careful consideration of all testimony and evidence presented today, he began, I have reached a decision in the matter of guardianship for Emma and Jack Collins. She meticulously outlined the factors: stability, relationship with the children, support systems, the social worker's recommendations. I held my breath, Thomas's hand tightening around mine. While I recognize Mrs. Peterson's genuine desire to care for her grandchildren, I find that placement with Adelaide and Thomas Bennett provides the most beneficial environment for the children at this time. The presence of a cousin close in age, the demonstrated parenting capabilities, and the strong recommendation of the social worker all support this decision. Relief, pure and overwhelming, flooded through me. For a moment, I couldn't hear anything else. We had won. Emma and Jack were coming home. Additionally, Chief Justice Thompson continued, I am ordering a visitation schedule that includes regular contact with Mrs. Peterson, recognizing the importance of maintaining that grandparent relationship. The details will be worked out with family services. My mother's attorney leaned over to whisper, but she shook her head slightly, her eyes fixed on the table. This court will retain jurisdiction to modify these arrangements as circumstances change, including potential reunification with a mother upon successful completion of her rehabilitation program. Court is adjourned. The gavel struck, and the tension that had held me rigid throughout the hearing finally, completely released. Thomas embraced me. I buried my face against his shoulder, utterly overwhelmed. Congratulations, Sophia said warmly, as people began to file out. This is the right outcome for those children. I nodded, unable to form words past the lump in my throat. As we gathered our things, I saw my mother still seated at her table, now completely alone, her attorney speaking with the clerk. On impulse, I approached her. Mother, I said softly. She looked up, her expression a complex mixture of emotions I couldn't quite decipher. Hurt, anger, yes, but also something that might have been shame. 6 years, she said, her voice barely audible. You've been a judge for 6 years, and I didn't know. You never asked, I replied simply. You assumed I was failing. She flinched. I was trying to protect you from disappointment. The world is harsh, Adelaide. I wanted you to be prepared. By making sure I never felt good enough. That wasn't protection, Mother. That was control. Her lips pressed into a thin line. You've always been so stubborn, so convinced you knew better than me. And I proved I did, I said, not unkindly. Mother, I built a life you know nothing about because you never bothered to truly see me, to listen to me. You created a version of me in your head that doesn't exist. She looked away, gathering her purse and standing abruptly. The judge said I get visitation with the children. Yes, I confirmed, and we will honor that. But there will be boundaries, Mother. I will not allow Emma and Jack to grow up feeling the way I did, constantly criticized and diminished. I never, she began, then stopped. For perhaps the first time in our relationship, she seemed utterly at a loss for words. We can talk about arrangements next week, I said. For now, Thomas and I need to prepare for bringing Emma and Jack home. I turned to go, but her voice stopped me. Adelaide. She hesitated. Congratulations on becoming a judge. That's quite an achievement. The words were stiff, awkward, as if spoken in a foreign language. But they were the closest thing to approval she had offered me in decades. I nodded once, a silent acknowledgement, then walked away to join Thomas and Sophia by the door. Outside the courthouse, the bright afternoon sunlight felt symbolic, illuminating a new, hopeful chapter in all our lives. Thomas called the social worker to arrange for Emma and Jack to move in the very next day. I stood on the steps, breathing deeply, feeling both victorious and strangely sad. Are you okay? Thomas asked, slipping his arm around my waist. Yes, I said. It's just, I never wanted it to come to this. A public confrontation, our family issues exposed in court. I know, he replied, but maybe it needed to happen. Your mother's been living in a fiction of her own creation for years. Now she has to face reality. We drove home, stopping to buy a welcome banner that Lily insisted on making herself. As I helped her with the letters, carefully guiding her small hands, I made a silent vow. These children would always know they were enough, exactly as they were. That evening, as we finished dinner, the doorbell rang. Thomas went to answer it while I helped Lily with her dessert. A moment later, he returned to the kitchen with an unexpected visitor. My mother stood awkwardly in our dining room, looking utterly out of place. Lily, always friendly, waved happily. Hi, Grandma. Hello, Lily, my mother said, her voice softer than usual. Then, to me, may I speak with you privately? Thomas nodded to me. I'll get Lily ready for bath time. Take your time. I led my mother to the living room, gesturing for her to sit on the couch while I took the chair opposite. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Your home is lovely, she finally said, glancing around the comfortable, lived-in space, toys neatly corralled in colorful bins, family photos everywhere. Thank you, I replied, waiting. She smoothed her skirt over her knees, a nervous gesture I'd rarely seen. I've been thinking about what happened today, about what you said. I remained silent, giving her space. Perhaps I have been too critical over the years. I thought I was preparing you for a world that would judge you harshly. I didn't want you to be disappointed when things didn't work out as you hoped. But things did work out. Mother, I said gently, firmly. I became exactly what I said I wanted to be. And you missed it because you were so certain I would fail. She flinched. Yes, I see that now. She paused, struggling visibly. Adelaide, I don't know how to be different than I am, but I would like to try. For Emma and Jack's sake. And for Lily's. And perhaps for ours as well. It wasn't quite an apology. But from my mother, it was extraordinary. An acknowledgement, at least, that something had to change. It will take time, I said carefully. Trust is built slowly, especially after it's been broken repeatedly. She nodded, her eyes downcast. I understand. I just want a chance. We can start with a visitation schedule for Emma and Jack, I offered. Perhaps you could come for Sunday dinners. Spend some time getting to know them in our home first, where they feel safe. I would like that, she said. And for a brief, startling moment, I glimpsed something in her eyes I had been seeking my entire life. Respect. As she rose to leave, she paused by the mantel, where a photo stood, me in my judicial robes, Thomas and Lily beside me at my investiture ceremony. "You look very distinguished," she said quietly. "Your father would have been proud." She left before I could respond, the mention of my father bringing a fresh ache to my heart. I stood in the doorway, watching her walk to her car. This complicated woman who had shaped so much of who I was, for better and for worse. Thomas found me there a few minutes later. "What did she want?" he asked gently. "A second chance, I think." He wrapped his arms around me from behind, resting his chin on my shoulder. "Are you going to give it to her?" I considered the question carefully. Not unconditionally, but yes, a chance. For the children's sake, and maybe for hers, too. She's not young anymore, Thomas. I don't want to look back someday and regret not trying. He nodded against my shoulder. "You've always been the strongest person I know, Adelaide Bennett, and the most compassionate." That night, as I checked on Lily one last time, watching her peaceful sleep in the glow of her nightlight, I thought about the legacy we pass to our children. Not just our features or our mannerisms, but our wounds, our fears, our beliefs about ourselves and the world. I had spent 30 years believing I was never quite good enough because that was what my mother had taught me. I would not pass that belief to Lily or to Emma and Jack. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Integrating two traumatized children, establishing boundaries with my mother, balancing my return to the bench with my expanded family responsibilities. But tonight, in the quiet of my daughter's room, I felt ready. For the first time in my life, I knew with absolute certainty that I was enough. 3 months after the courtroom revelation, I stood in my chambers, adjusting my judicial robe before heading into court. The familiar weight of the black fabric settled on my shoulders, a physical reminder of the authority I had earned and the responsibility I carried. On my desk sat 3 framed photos, one of Thomas and me on our wedding day, one of Lily at her 5th birthday party, and a new, cherished edition, Emma and Jack laughing as they played in our backyard sprinkler with Lily. My return to the bench had been met with quiet respect. No one mentioned the case directly, but notes of support and knowing nods were common. Chief Justice Thompson had stopped by my chambers on my first day back. "Family comes first, Adelaide," she'd said simply. "But we are glad to have you back. The children who come before this court need judges who understand what is truly at stake." I thanked her, not just for her words, but for her pivotal role in revealing the truth. She waved away my gratitude. The truth has a way of emerging when it is most needed. At home, we'd settled into a new rhythm, 5 of us instead of 3. Emma and Jack arrived with small suitcases and guarded expressions. Lily immediately appointed herself their personal tour guide, showing them the backyard tree swing, the secret cupboard under the stairs, and the kitchen drawer for art supplies. "You can have anything in here," she told them solemnly, "except the glitter. That's only for special projects, because Daddy says it multiplies when you're not looking." The first few weeks were challenging. Jack had nightmares, screaming himself awake, his small body trembling. Emma, protective and watchful, initially supervised every interaction between her brother and us, as if she didn't quite trust we'd care for him properly. Thomas and I focused on establishing a stable routine. Bedtimes, meals, playtimes, all followed a predictable pattern. Slowly, the children began to relax. Jack's nightmares became less frequent. Emma started to play more, supervise less. They began to feel like part of our family, not just visitors. Natalie called weekly from rehab, her voice stronger each time. She spoke to her children with a heartbreaking mix of love and regret. "I'm getting better," she'd tell them. "Aunt Adelaide and Uncle Thomas will take good care of you until I can." I visited her twice, seeing for myself the progress she was making. This time, it felt different. This time, there was genuine hope. Looking back, I never thought a courtroom would be the place where I finally found my voice, or where my mother and I would finally begin to truly see each other. It was excruciating, but it was also freeing. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, but it gave me my family, and it gave me myself. Have you ever had to stand up to someone you loved, even when it felt like it would break you? How did you find the strength? I really want to know what you think in the comments below.